9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
There is a class of colored people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, and the hardships of the Negro race before the public. Some of these people do not want the Negro to lose his grievances because they do not want to lose their jobs. There is a certain class of race problem solvers who don't want the patient to get well. That was said by Booker T. Washington.
There is nothing wrong with your screen. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling the messaging in this transmission. We will tell you the topics you may speak about. We will remove any speech we deem unfit. We will identify and protect you from all that is evil. You need only put your full trust in us. We are the government, and we are here to help.
Hello and welcome to episode 14 of the Patriot Think Tank. George, what we got cooking today?
Yeah, Jack, we got a great show today, covering quite a variety of topics. We got Congressman Mike Waltz, who has sent a Freedom of Information Act and has gotten the results to our Secretary of Defense to get some information on West Point about CRT. It's a little bit disturbing what he finds. We'll give you the latest on that. A U.S. Border Patrol agent has been assisting the cartels. What the heck is going on there? Jack's got some information for you there. The rant today will go over some tips on how you can identify whether or not critical race theory is being taught in your school district. And another FOIA request has been issued and received regarding the VA showing adverse effects of the vaccine. This has also been censored. There's a shocker. We'll have some more information on that as well. And then Joe Biden accuses voter registration laws of being Jim Crow. We debunked that. We'll get into that as well. Jack, you ready to go ahead and take a dive into the tank?
I'm ready. In April, Congressman Mike Waltz, a West Point graduate, made public examples of the Corps of Cadets being mandated to attend seminars and presentations on critical race theory. They included what he believed to be inflammatory lessons and presentations that are detrimental to the mission and morale of the U.S. Army. Let's take a look.
I just want to emphasize something. This isn't something that we're raising. This came to me from cadets, from families, from soldiers, with their alarm and their concern at how divisive this type of teaching is that is rooted in Marxism, that classifies people along class lines, an entire race of people as oppressor and oppressed. I cannot think of anything more divisive and more destructive to unit morale. I want to be very clear. The military needs to be open to all Americans. Absolutely. That is the strength of the United States military. But once we're in, we bleed green and our skin color is camouflage. We're worried about that American flag on our shoulder. That's the only thing our enemies are worried about.
So as a result of that, Judicial Watch requested all records related to diversity, inclusion, and equity training for first-year cadets entering West Point. When the United States Military Academy failed to respond, Judicial Watch filed a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit against the Department of Defense for all records related to diversity, inclusion, and equity training for those first-year cadets. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. One piece of information that's been obtained by Judicial Watch is a presentation slide which depicted a lecture by Dr. Carol Anderson of Emory University with the title, Understanding Whiteness and White Rage. Well, I don't know this for sure. I'm guessing that the good doctor is one of those people that would sit down with a troubled student and explain to them how unique and special they are, and then proclaim to the masses how they are racial automatons, each inherently programmed by the box they're in. Your thoughts, George?
Yeah, so this one gets me, Jack. So we've been talking a lot about critical race theory and how it's been infecting really every part of our society. And it seems like it's everywhere to us all right now. Like it just all of a sudden popped up everywhere. But it's important for everyone to understand this has been going on for decades, And I'm going to, I'm going to cover this, in more detail in different stuff. But as far as CRT is concerned, but on this particular issue, keep in mind, right? This is the military, right? So we've been talking about, in previous episodes, the recruiting, right? They have these woke videos that they're using for recruiting. You're looking at those videos, you're laughing because it's just silly when compared to actual what a military video should look like, right? And we put it up next to a Chinese propaganda military recruitment video and a Russian one, and a lot of other channels did that, as well after the fact, but not that they took it from us. I think everybody just had the same idea. Like, what do we look like compared to everyone else? And then you look at the things like the purging, right? So they're trying to remove you. You've got this situation with this doctor who's teaching that the Republican Party is an extremist platform, is a white extremist platform. And this was the case we were trying to make when we were talking about the purge. Because they've got that new term that they've coined, right? Which you can get, by the way, on our website under that episode. I forget the exact episode it was, but you'll see it, Military Purge. They coined the term patriot extremism. And it pretty much describes, with the exception of the last sentence, it describes pretty much every single conservative in America. And to the average American who was not indoctrinated into this nonsense, it seems like it's all coming from everywhere right now. But really, it's just been infecting each one of these institutions for God knows how long. And now it's been exposed. So the light shines on it. So now you see all those cockroaches that were around. You see them all now. And it seems like, where the hell did they all come from? Well, they were always there. The lights were just turned off.
Dear President Biden, Jim Crow era has nothing whatever to do with, say, Ohio's restriction of early voting from 35 to 29 days, or with limiting same-day registration. Nor do they have anything to do with regulating absentee ballots, out-of-precinct voting, or voter ID requirements, which are all reasonable electoral integrity measures already approved by the Carter-Baker Commission so many years ago. Here's a quick clip of Judicial Watch providing testimony to Congress on this.
Bear in mind that the alleged Section 2 violation that the trial court found to have occurred was that Ohio cut its early voting days from 35 days to 29 days. Bear in mind as well that as we sit here, Connecticut and Delaware have no early voting. So it's not that you're going to get sued for whether or not you have early voting. You're going to get sued if you have it and then repeal it. That makes no sense. Now, I would add that some very famous politicians, including the President of the United States, have invoked Jim Crow. That is, in my view, an outrageous thing to say. At its worst, Jim Crow involved state government officials colluding with domestic terrorists to murder American citizens. Even if you look at the voting angle of Jim Crow, it involved literacy tests that were 6 pages long, and no one, I respectfully submit, on this committee could pass. It involved all white primaries that determined the winner. It was shocking in its extent, but it has nothing to do with 35 days to 29 days of early voting. It has nothing to do with no out-of-precinct voting, as in Arizona, for some counties, not all. It has nothing to do with saying that mail ballots after COVID have to be collected by a family member, household member, or caregiver. We need some perspective in this debate. We need to understand what's happening. I can go on at length although not according to the clock, but I can talk about the Texas and the Georgia legislation as well. And by the way, both Texas and Georgia, unlike Connecticut and Delaware, have early voting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further in their testimony, Judicial Watch provided historical data, not pop culture talking points. Here is the true story of ballot access in America. Now, to objectively evaluate whether racial minorities have an equal opportunity to participate in the electoral process, you must look at racial registration and turnout data. Now, current data shows that Black registration has completely rebounded since 1965. The four biggest registration disparities where white registration most exceeds Black registration are found in Massachusetts, Wisconsin, Oregon, and Colorado. Of course, all those facts are still going to be set aside by the talking heads because they are forever encroaching with their socialist movement, regardless of reality. Your thoughts, George?
It's just the most ridiculous thing. It's so ridiculous that I can't do anything but make fun of it. Like, I can't take it serious. Like, I just start laughing every time somebody puts something out there, because every single argument that's made against voter registration laws and voter ID laws just cracks me the hell up. It's just funny. It's all it is. It's just funny. Like, and again, these are arguments that I love having on Facebook. You know, I would say arguments, more debates, but like I love having these debates on Facebook because I love, like I said last time, pinning these people and getting them to admit that what you're actually saying is that minorities are too incompetent to get IDs. And when you get them, like they're so on their talking points that they do, you know, and I told you that the buzzwords are marginalized people, underserved people. You know, these are the talking points. You'll hear every single person argue that. They all think that they're original with it because that's one thing about the left. They never know that they're regurgitating talking points, ever. They never know this. They think they're the one that went and found that unique article that talked about marginalized and underserved people, and they stick it in their head, and then they just start blurting it out all over social media. And to those of us who debate these people on a regular basis, it becomes clear it's not just the same belief, it's the same verbatim, you know, talking point. And, you know, as you watch them do this, you have to wind them into the reality of what they're saying. And once you do that, and then you get that aha moment when you finally boil them down. So it's like, oh, marginalized people, okay, well, you know, what are those? And we went through this, and then finally they realize, well, yeah, I am saying that.
It might be time, Georgie. It might be time. What do you think?
It is time, Jack. And what we're doing today for the rant is I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a quick education based on my own personal experience on how to uncover through the cryptic nonsense whether or not your school district is actually pumping CRT into your school. I can almost guarantee you that they are, and I can almost guarantee you that they will lie to you about it, and then I can show you how to bring out that lie. Let's get it on.
The story behind this picture. I'd rather hold on to that. Just tell me what this seems to be a picture of.
It's just two people chilling.
Right, just two people. That's nothing more to this picture?
Nah, not really. Just two people chilling.
I don't believe that you believe that. I don't believe that you look at this as just two people. I don't think
truly
you
is just two people, though, is it not?
Yeah, but I think you're being intentionally coy about what this is a picture of.
What would I be being coy about?
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
I don't want you to ride. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the streets. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad.
Has the whole world gone crazy? Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rules?
You have the luxury of not knowing what I know.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore!
So recently I saw a Facebook post pop up in one of our community boards on Facebook for my local city, and it's a small city, and it was saying that they were starting to teach critical race theory in the high school. So with my daughter about to enter actually has entered high school, I'm thinking to myself, all right, I got to look into this because we've done enough research to know how much poison this is. I need to know what's going on. So I reach out to the principal. I ask him in an email. He tells me, no, there is no critical race theory course, and we do not have any intention of implementing a critical race theory course in the future. So like any good American, I totally did not believe him and then went ahead and followed up with the superintendent. So the superintendent has someone get back to me, and they send me this email. And in the email, they say to me, number one, the person who got back to me is the director of English Learners and Equity. Okay, so right away, the term equity, whenever you have a director of equity, you've already got a poisonous situation. And I'll explain that in a little bit. But here he is, the director, but it's English that struck me here. Because if you look, so here's a director of English, and if you look at these bullet points, they're completely improperly done. So the first one, there's no critical race theory course being offered at this school or plans to offer critical race theory course. Now, there is a 12th grade English language arts course focused on social justice. So it's a lie without lying, okay? So technically there's no critical race theory class specifically, but there is critical theory, which is what critical race theory falls under. So, but because I asked the question that way, and this is very important for you to know when you ask, because if they tell you no, it doesn't mean no. It doesn't mean all the poisonous stuff you're hearing about what they're teaching is not going on in your school. What it means is that there's no specific, they're not teaching the 1619 Project specifically or other works of fiction like that. What they're teaching is critical theory. So there's the segregation, the focus on race, having everyone identify each other by race, telling white kids in school that they're oppressors, telling them that they're privileged. All of this nonsense that's been going on is absolutely there. And they can tell you with a straight face that no, they're not teaching critical race theory, knowing that they are teaching critical theory because they know what you're asking. That's why I say it's a lie. Okay, they know what you're asking, but they don't think they're going to play the game and see how deep you look into it, which is what they did here. Okay, so of course I looked into it. So the next three bullet points, though, are all referring to the second bullet point, which means they should not be bullet pointed straight down the line. There should be a new category moved to the right so that these can list and show that they're all referring to the second bullet point. So that's where I was getting to with the first disturbing fact, that this is the director of English. That's kind of concerning. But he says, okay, this course is an optional course. That was good. The course aligns to the literacy standards and focuses on critical thinking. That's alarming. Critical thinking is not normally alarming when you're talking to normal people, but when social justice is being used in those same terms, immediately you should be thinking, all right, this is going down the road of critical theory. All right. And if I would have just left it at this email, and that's where it would have ended. Okay. So, and the next one's good too. So through expository and literary text, students explore class, race, power, etc. What etc.? And what do you mean by power? So clearly they're about to start teaching your kids about how some races are more powerful than other races, as if like all white people are the Rothschilds or we're all Bill Gates. This is the type of stuff. I mean, I'm oversimplifying it, but generally what they teach. They're going to teach the white kids that they are inherently powerful over other people, but they're going to teach it in a way where that power is oppressive and that those kids are oppressors, even though they have no idea what the hell these people are talking. And this is where the critical thinking comes in, as they mentioned earlier, because it's not critical thinking like you would think of critical thinking. The reason they call it critical thinking is because they've got to teach your children to unthink everything that they know to be true, even though that stuff is true. And the only way to do that is to present it in such a way where we're not telling you your whole life's a lie. We're not telling you all the people you know are not really the nice people that you know, but really they're evil. That's not what we're doing. What we're doing is just we're asking you to critically think. We're going to show you what really goes on behind the veil. All right. And this is where concepts like unconscious bias and things like that come in, because they go ahead and they try and say, no, your white friends are racist. You're thinking as the kid, you're like, no, they're not racist. And we all hang out together, all different colors, and we never think about it. No, they are racist. And this is where we really need you to think critically about this. Okay. Unconsciously, they're really racist. Your parents, yeah. They're racist too. This is what they mean by critical thinking. So I asked for some materials and they gave me those materials. And here's one of them. So here's the main subject piece that they gave. And when I looked at it, again, now here's equity, okay? Equity is one of those terms. It's a classic Marxist term. It's a classic Marxist concept to promote equity. Now, they've taught this to the teachers in the schools, not recently, but while those teachers were getting their degrees, they were learning about all this stuff, okay? But they were learning it in a context and were interpreting it and internalizing it in a different way than it's being implemented now, okay? And again, this is something that's gone down in every socialist Marxist country ever. And in every one of those scenarios, this is how they began to control information. They do it through the schools. And they're very patient, folks, very patient. This has been going on for decades on end. It got slowed down a little bit with the fall of the Soviet Union, but it didn't take long to pick back up. And in the end, the age of technology, with the government now utilizing tech the way they are, by their own admission at this point, that's where we're at. So equity is equal outcomes. The only way to get equal outcomes is to force them. And by forcing them, there we go down the road. This is why tyranny always ends from socialism, Marxism, and communism. And they will try and split hairs and say, no, that's not socialism, that's communism. No, that's not communism, that's socialism. If you're confused about the difference between the three, socialism is an economic system, and it's centrally controlled economy, which is used by communism, fascism, etc., all of which run under the philosophy of Marxism. Leninism was Marxist. It all goes back to Karl Marx. And it all ends in millions of people dying. It's just always been that way. No, we're not at that point yet, but we're on our way. We're on our way. And in each one of these countries, no one believed it could happen to their country. And by the time it's got itself implanted, people are not only, the government doesn't even have to do it, citizens are going after each other if it's done right. Sound familiar? So here we are. I look at this document, a couple of things that seem harmless, but they are harmful. All right. TK through 12 education. All right. They want you to act as a responsible citizens and adults. Now that sounds legit, right? Everyone wants people to act as responsible citizens and adults. But what they mean by responsible citizen, and this is where the course curriculum comes in and the reading materials, where they're taught that America is the devil, America's bad, flags are bad. If people carry flags, they're racist, the whole nine. So under that context, if you're a responsible citizen, well, you've got to oppose anybody who has a flag. You've got to not like white people. You've got all of these things have to come into fruition, because white supremacists, extremists, all these boogeymen that they created. And the only reason they're not all white supremacists is because not everyone who sees this BS, who sees through this BS, is white. So those people are where the extremists come in. Down below, so they'll examine the identity and social membership in order to not only become a social justice literate, but also become an active participant in our democratic society. So again, social justice being the only creepy word in there, what they mean by an active participant in a democratic society is they want to train you to be an activist. That's what they're saying. They want to train you to march in the streets, get involved in all this chaos that's going on. There's nothing wrong with being an activist for a cause here and there or whatever. But you see where these kids end up today. Okay. These are not the civil rights movements that we're talking about here. What they're going to end up doing is joining BLM or joining sunrise.org or joining one of these poisonous organizations and just becoming a hot mess. So the other document they sent me, and this is how I know they were full of crap, because I asked them if they were teaching critical race theory. They said no, but they're teaching critical theory, and that would have been important to throw out. Again, I explained critical thinking already. So critical thinking and critical theory explains what it means to think critically about social justice. Social justice being that white people are bad, they're oppressors, they have white privilege. So they want you to think critically about that. That takes back to what the kids are learning. So if they're teaching the kids to think critically about social justice, they're really teaching them to unthink what they know, be critical of what they know, and absorb the poison that they're being given. I'm only showing everyone this because a lot of parents are trying to go and see if this is really happening in there, because it's all surreal. Like when you hear it all, it's just surreal. You can't even believe that they're teaching this stuff. So people want to check. They want to ask their educators and their superintendents if it's happening, and they will lie to you. So it's important that you know that. Right. So I've been putting out these mini rants lately, and two of them were about the Pennsylvania school board, where they're just blasting these parents, yelling at them, telling them to sit down. They're done. You're finished. You're done. Mid-sentence, cutting them off. They're getting crazy right now because everyone's figured out what's going on and they're learning about this, and it's pissing everyone off, because it's just horrific and it's poisonous. But then you've got 2 or 3 generations who this is all they know. So you're going to have this pushback. You're going to have this. Imagine someone coming to you and telling you George Washington was not the first president of the United States. Imagine someone coming to you and telling you Abe Lincoln was a horrific president. Despite the fact that you know all the intricacies of what went down and all that, that's not even the point. They're trying to unteach, well, not even unteach, because these are children. So we're trying to unteach everything that they've learned in their life. Like they've already advanced to the point where generations have already left the schools and are out there. That's where these college kids are coming from. You know, there are some who are a little older. You know, the millennials are kind of a mix. Generation Y and Z, they're all in. So trying to convince these people what's really going on is difficult. And that's why they're being so bold right now. You wonder why they're being so bold? Because they've got a couple generations of Americans under their belt, really 3 generations of Americans under their belt, that will come and defend them at any turn. And one last thing, you want to scour these documents for any links that lead to readings or lead to any course material. Also, request all of this information. They have to give you the reading lists and things like that. But if there are links, those are also important to look at, because they are going to, I don't want to say reteach history, but they'll teach a very selective version of history. The only point that I'm making here is that it's not a one-sided story, and that's the reading that they're teaching your kids. You want to get a hold of that history and give them the right version of that as well. The readings are important. The readings are very, very important. And if you see the name Ibram X. Kendi, just throw the book away. Just toss it in the trash, because that's where it belongs. Now, there was also a book on there called Is Everyone Really Equal? Now, the short answer to that is yes, of course they are. But that's not what this book is preaching. So here's the book description for this book, which I had to go look up separately. So you see the highlighted portion. This comprehensive resource includes new features such as a chapter on intersectionality and classism, discussion on contemporary activism, Black Lives Matter, Occupy, and I don't know more. So Black Lives Matter and Occupy, we've covered Black Lives Matter already. This is a communist organization. That's what they are, okay? If you don't believe me, if you still think that they somehow are some organic grassroots organization, okay, they just got done supporting the Cuban government in this whole Cuban crisis. The Cuban government. This is one of the top, one of the most embarrassing communist regimes ever, long-lasting, albeit, but one of the worst. And they're in support, full support, down with the people. They're a communist organization. And Occupy, really? And of course, there will be material on white settler societies and colonialism, because no good equity book would be valid without getting into the white settler situation, right? And then the last one that caught my eye was vocabulary to practice using. We're going to teach you how to speak. We're going to teach you the right verbiage to use when you speak, so that you're on message and that you don't deviate. It's some twisted stuff. This is what they call intellectuals today, people that write this garbage. It's just amazing to me that this goes on. It's so surreal and Orwellian. There are no words for it. Look at these books, see what they're about, and be prepared to counter argue this, because despite their preaching of critical thinking, they don't accept counter arguments very well. Now, yeah, they'll let you make one, and then they'll gang up on you and comfortably and intellectually let you know how wrong you are. There is no getting off message with these people. None. If you have a different opinion, it's just because you're not getting it. You're not able to comprehend what they're saying. It's deep. Pay attention to the readings. So be aware of it. Ask your school boards. Get active. But most importantly, teach your children about unity yourself. Teach your children not to view, no matter what they hear in school. Teach them that color is irrelevant. Teach them that race does not matter. Teach them when they go out and they take actions every day that they judge people based on their behavior and based on their character, not on the color of their skin. And that if someone doesn't start from a high enough place, that doesn't change the fact that they can get there. And there's only one country in this world, that in this history of this world, where that has always been the case. Rant over.
And like that, he's gone.
Well, it sounds like we're getting a call. Jeannie, connect the encrypted line, please.
Yes, Master.
Jack Burns.
Jack, it's Joe.
Joe, I'm glad you called. I've been worried about you.
I'm fine. Just had to put my foot down. Let them know who's in charge.
So, did they give you a key and let you come and go as you please?
Nope. They said this is the way it's always been. I asked how come I would see Barack walking around outside so much.
What'd they say?
They told me it was because he smoked. It's against the law to smoke inside, you know.
Well, maybe you should put it to the test and tell them you want to have a smoke.
I'm way ahead of you, Jack. I found one of Slick Willie's cigars under the seat cushion of his old couch. I was going to have him take me out, but something wasn't right.
What do you mean, Joe?
It smelled funny.
What smelled funny?
The cigar. It smelled like tobacco mixed with something my sniffer remembers, only older.
Why don't you have them bring you a pack of cigarettes then?
What, it'd have the Surgeon General yelling at me too?
Who else yells at you, Joe?
Well, there are these two big Secret Service guys that are kind of rough.
Rough? How so?
I just went to the G7, you know. When they told me we were going, I got all excited. I thought that was a new ride at Disneyland.
I could see why that would be disappointing, Joe.
I got over it. I'm scrappy, you know.
Yeah, Scrappy Joe. So, what about the two guys?
Oh, yeah. So we took a tour of a local elementary school. I love elementary schools.
Well, what happened?
Every time I leaned down to sniff one of those little munchkins, they would grab me by the shoulders and yank me back.
Well, that's no way to treat our president.
I know, right? And at story time, they wouldn't let anyone sit on my lap. I love kids sitting on my lap.
Well, that I can kind of understand. Who else is mean to you, Joe?
Mama Red.
Who?
Mama Red. Yeah, I don't know her real name, but she smells like a swamp. Every time I'm getting ready to go somewhere, she hands me these flashcards and makes me practice for hours.
Well, she sounds demanding.
Yeah, and mean. She told me I yell too much, so at the next press conference I whispered.
Well, that explains that.
She took my ice cream away.
She did what?
She took my ice cream away for 2 days. I can't go without my ice cream. It's like Nancy going without taking a nip.
We gotta do something, Joe. The thought of you living like that it's troubling.
I gotta go.
Is it the elevator again?
No, I gotta go. To the can. Talk to you next week, Jack.
Bye, Joe. Why are Secret Service agents pushing around our president? And who is this Mama Red? I need you folks to help out at home. In fact, the first person that goes to our website and clicks Contact Us and provides the correct name of who Mama Red is, you'll get a free Patriot Think Tank t-shirt. And we'll let you pick the size. In the meantime, I'm going to call Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch. Maybe there's a way to use the Freedom of Information Act to get to the bottom of this. So in our continuing coverage of the border, we want to bring something to your attention. U.S. Border Patrol agent Oberlin Pena has been arrested and charged after helping smugglers traffic cocaine. Pena took $1,000 in exchange for helping a vehicle carry at least 5 kilograms of cocaine through a border checkpoint in Texas. Now, that's according to federal prosecutors. He gave smugglers detailed instructions on how to conceal the drugs in a motor vehicle and the tactics to distract the canine unit at the checkpoint. He also conducted counter surveillance. This is one example of how drugs enter this country from Mexico. Here's a quick clip.
Officials say Pena allegedly utilized his knowledge as a Border Patrol agent in acting as a scout and providing information about the inspection lanes and which one to utilize. According to a criminal complaint, Pena gave precise instructions on how to hide the drugs and tactics to use in order to distract the K9 unit at the checkpoint. If convicted of the charges, Pena faces a minimum of 10 years up to life in federal prison as well as a possible $10 million maximum fine.
Looking at the overarching issue from a statistical standpoint, between October 2020 and May 2021, Customs and Border Protection have seized 92,000 pounds of drugs from vehicles at the Mexican border, according to the agency. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Our unprotected borders present an enormous challenge. Over the last 3 years, federal agents had a 4,000% increase in fentanyl seizures. The fentanyl is being smuggled through the desert. They intimidate migrants and have them transport the narcotics into the United States. It's bad enough that we have criminals in our border agency, but to have a federal government that characterizes a border wall as anything but humane, when so many young people are dying from drug overdose in the United States, and so many are being abused and terrorized on the Mexican side. I'm astounded by the segment of our population that claims so much injustice in our past, but turns a blind eye to the injustice of this issue. George?
Yeah, I mean, we get into this, Jack, and we look at these people, and you know, we know that there's a certain segment of the population that's just never going to change their mind unless some sort of life event happens to them, right? They're always going to dismiss and pretend that these things aren't problems and whatnot. And I'm starting to get tired of trying to convince them, because no matter what you put in front of them, they don't speak rationally, right? They'll just, you get enough information in front of them where it's just totally, whatever the topic is irrefutable, and they just go into like idiot mode. If you're talking to them on social media, then they start responding in memes, right? So they just start putting up memes that are just like meaningless, and it's basically them being a 5-year-old kid saying, I can't handle this information. This is way too much. It doesn't compute. There's nothing I can Google right now to refute this information, and they can't handle it. So as far as the ignorance of the population, it is what it is. Now, with respect to the border agents, Michael Yohn had mentioned this, and we didn't put this in the clips. We did a piece on crossing the Darien Strait, and Michael Yohn, who was an on-the-ground reporter at Panama, he both reported at the beginning of the run, and then at the beginning of the Darien Strait and at the other side of the Darien Strait. He was not dumb enough to try and get through the Darien Strait. He explained to us what was going on at the border control and how demoralized the border agents were and how there was corruption and such. Now, he mentioned it not in terms of fentanyl or other drugs. He mentioned it in terms of just demoralization and basically just allowing people to go over because they're just done. Like, they're just done. They're tired of trying to fight and fight and fight. And you do all this work to apprehend people, and then they just get let go.
So once again, big tech and our federal government continue to be on the lookout for posts that attempt to assess and reveal vaccine risk. They continue to label posts as misinformation or simply remove them. Recently, documents obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request on April 14th of 2021 brought to the public's eye 75 pages of records from the Department of Veterans Affairs. The documents detail the adverse reactions veterans had to the COVID-19 vaccines. Let's give a listen to Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch for a moment.
According to the VA, they sent us a cover letter with these documents. They send these reports on to the FDA's CDC VAERS database, which is the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. And then allegedly this sort of stuff is put up there. But of course, they didn't give us some of the underlying data that is typically made publicly available on the VAERS report. So we don't know what was sent or if it was really sent. So what was the complaint about this? Well, we didn't provide context that these reports don't necessarily mean there's a causal link, a causal link specifically, causal, meaning because there was a reported adverse event, it doesn't mean the vaccine caused it. It's mere present or being reported to the Veterans Administration doesn't mean it caused it. Well, first of all, the documents that we received don't say that. And that's an argument. It's not a fact. They wanted us to include that context. In fact, we linked to the VAERS database, which describes that. So in response, Facebook suppressed our post. They labeled it and suppressed it.
We'll post links to the 75 pages and a chart under episode 14. The information was obtained and posted to social media by Judicial Watch. We understand that correlation does not equal causation. But when it comes to vaccine event reporting, the American people benefit from more, not less, information about the safety and efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccines. So they're better able to evaluate risk versus reward. And in my opinion, when you combine the federal government's insistence on taking an experimental drug and what appears to be a lack of objectivity, it's hard not to make the leap that there is more beneath the surface with regard to objectives. That in and of itself leads to mistrust as people are seeking information due to a lack of trust. George?
Yeah, I mean, look, we covered this, right, on our vaccine piece where, and I said it then and I'll say it again, if someone's telling you the vaccine is safe, at best, they have no freaking clue what they're talking about because no one does. And even on Facebook, on that episode, they tagged it with some COVID vaccine piece. And the tag that they put on there didn't even tell you the vaccine is safe. What it says was that agencies were continually monitoring and it has been so far safe, but they're continually monitoring for any adverse effects. You know what that means? That means it may not be safe. But if it's not safe, don't worry, because we're monitoring. Like, what good does that do me? If I end up with a swollen heart or any of these issues, am I supposed to feel better because you're monitoring? So, all right, so cool. Now you're watching my heart swell. That sure helps the swelling go down, doesn't it? It's like, you know, when you get into this messaging and this censorship and this nonsense, and now we've got Psaki out there just basically spilling the beans, talking about, you know, how this censorship piece works, right? Dr. Shiva and his lawsuit talking about how this censorship piece works. Like, I'm glad we've been all over this early, and I'm glad that we have people like Dr. Shiva in the world who are willing to take them on and go after it and try and expose this, because it's not an easy thing to prove.
You know, with all this information and all that we're learning and so much more that we know now, there's still a lot that we don't know.
There's so much that we don't know. There's so much that we don't know, Jack. You know what? You know what else we don't know?
What's that?
You don't know Jack.
Judicial Watch is a more independent, reliable reporter of details of the deep state, the way our government really operates in Washington, D.C., than the New York Times, the Washington Post, NBC, you name it. We do real journalism. Those media I just talked to you about are liberal advocacy groups that sometimes do journalism, mostly report gossip, and are vehicles for government officials to undermine our republic through criminal activity. Criminal leaks, classified information, the leaks of classified information.
So that was Tom Fitton, president of a nonprofit organization called Judicial Watch. This video is meant to draw your attention to the incredible work they are doing for our country. Judicial Watch leads the nation's nonprofit organizations in the number of Freedom of Information Act lawsuits it has filed over the last 19 years. The motto of Judicial Watch is, because no one is above the law. To this end, Judicial Watch uses the open records or Freedom of Information laws and other tools to investigate and uncover misconduct by government officials and litigation to hold them accountable. They have been so effective that President Trump appointed Tom Fitton to a judicial oversight agency. I'm going to provide a few current examples of how they are working to fight for our freedoms every day. First up is the suit against the United States Postal Service. Why? Because according to the suit, our Postal Service, which we pay for, has an Internet covert operations program monitoring our social media posts. That's right. This agency, which has lost $87 billion over the past 14 years, has time to look into your opinions, even though it has trouble getting a letter into your mailbox in a timely way, if at all. Another example is the fact that Judicial Watch is suing the FBI for records on alleged transfer of ATM transactions. These transactions took place in Washington, D.C. around January the 6th. Well, why is this important? Number one, it's a privacy issue. Number two, based upon stories I've read, it appears that the bank records are used to identify individuals, find photos of them, and then cross-reference with video recordings from the Capitol using facial recognition software. When the software signals a match, the FBI pays our citizens a visit and turns their life on end for hours, if not days, only to find they got it wrong. Finally, Judicial Watch conducted a vote-by-mail lawsuit against Los Angeles County. That resulted in LA's agreement to remove up to 1.6 million inactive voters from its voting rolls. Okay, so let's bring this thing full circle. As you and I go out and make our way daily in a free and capitalistic society that continues to attract millions from around the globe, Tom Fitton and his organization are in the background fighting for our ability to keep and improve upon what we have and hope to have for our families. I'd like to ask you to consider helping Tom continue to help us. Here's a suggestion. Go to their website today and, at a minimum, donate the cost of your favorite drive-through Happy Meal. Then forward this video to 5 friends with a recommendation to watch it. If you think about it, your money and your effort will pale in comparison to what this man and this organization have done for you and your family. All right, let's close this out. So the next time that someone says that our fight against the machine is futile, remember the name Judicial Watch and understand they don't know Tom.
That's the fact, Jack! That's the fact, Jack!
All right, folks, that brings us to the end of episode 14. Thank you very much for taking a dive in the tank with us. Georgie, any parting words?
No, just as always, if you like the content that we're putting out, make sure that you like us on Facebook. All right? Big deal. We're working on Facebook. We're getting ourselves out there. Make sure you like us on MeWe. And don't forget, YouTube We're as of the time of this recording, we need 5 subscribers to hit our first milestone of 100 subscribers. So get on there, click the bell, get on board. Go ahead and get alerts for every one of our episodes coming up, which will be on Wednesdays, as well as our shorter episodes that will pop out, mini rants and things of that nature going forward. Jack, I'm ready to go.
So am I, Georgie.